Reds fans, welcome back to the Let's Talk Liverpool podcast. Hope you guys have had a great weekend. Another fantastic result for us to keep this unbeaten run going for us. It's now, I think, up to 31 Premier League games over the end of last season and the beginning of this season, which I think has joined the record or tied the joint the record or beaten the record of the 88 team. And I don't know, because obviously I wasn't alive, but that 80s team of Liverpool was one of the most formidable in the country and in the world. So matching that is a huge achievement for Klopp and his team at the moment, just showing like how well we are playing and how consistent we've been for so long. And obviously with City, drawing against Newcastle, John Joe Shelvey being an absolute hero, it meant all the pressure was on us to get the 3 points against Brighton to extend that lead. Obviously Leicester playing, when this video is going out today, against Everton. So hopefully Everton can do us a solid favour here before we can hopefully then roll them over in midweek, in the first set of midweek Premier League games of the season. But yeah, so Brighton coming to Anfield was always going to be a difficult game. We haven't necessarily performed as well against them last season in particular, and I think one that's obviously down to us and us not playing at our best, but also I think Brighton have a role to play in that as well. I think they play in a way that makes it quite difficult for us to express ourselves, and we found that very difficult. Last season I think we only won 1-0 both at home at Anfield and away at the Amex, so it just shows that we did kind of struggle against them, but ultimately we did pick up the 6 points, and that was very much the case in the game. We started off very, very well, but we got kind of a bit nervy towards the end of the game, and we end up kind of just crawling over the line rather than running through and steaming over the line. But nevertheless, it is another 3 points that keeps us unbeaten this season, and just keeps this train marching on. So yeah, everything right now seems to be going in our favour, and I think we have to be obviously prepared for a point in the season where things maybe don't all go for us. But I think right now we're developing that buffer where we can afford things to maybe not go our way for a couple of games and still be able to have a gap to the chasing pack, whether that be Leicester or Man City. So yeah, the first half was kind of very Liverpool dominant. We had a handful of chances. Firmino having a shot that was really well saved by Matt Ryan. Mane having a chance as well, but it was actually 2 headers from the big man himself from the back, Virgil van Dijk, and actually 2 assists from Trent Alexander-Arnold that got us the 2 goals. Obviously, a 2-goal lead is obviously. The 1-goal lead is obviously the most precarious, but a 2-goal lead is kind of a tough position to be in as well, because 1 goal to the opposition really kind of changes the momentum of the game. And so us not being able to put away a third, be it in the first half or the second half, actually kind of made things a little more difficult for us. But we'll get to the second half a little later on. But yeah, in the first half we were actually playing probably a lot better than we've played for a lot of the past month. And it was 2 set pieces from Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I don't know the exact stats, but has taken a big lead, I think, ahead of Robbo in their little assist race this season. So one was a free kick from the inside right channel, and Van Dijk kind of just I think the Brighton line just dropped way too early. I think they held a pretty good line on the penalty box, but they just dropped too quickly, which allowed Trent to just pop the ball in there, and Van Dijk able to power a header in. And then the second goal was a corner from the left, whipped in with great amounts of pace from Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was the right height, it was the right pace, and pretty much all Virgil van Dijk had to do was get his head on it. The keeper had no chance, and so we found ourselves 2-0 up, making lots of chances, and things were going pretty well. Brighton did have a very good chance where the ball came in from the left, and I think Lewis Dunk, who was their centre back, maybe this was a game in which just centre backs could score, but yeah, he missed it. He fluffed a really good chance towards the end of the first half, which would have been very interesting had they scored then. And I think that actually probably would have been a good thing for us, because I did think maybe we got a little bit complacent and just took our foot off the gas a little bit in the second half. But yeah, in the first half, I definitely think we should have scored a few more goals. I think Firmino had the chance, as I mentioned earlier. Mane had another chance where the ball kind of came to him off a Brighton player in the 6-yard box, but it was straight at the goalkeeper. And Although obviously missing those chances, I think going in at half-time, Klopp and Liverpool and I was also very happy. 2-0 up at home. You didn't foresee too many struggles or anything. But credit to Brighton. They really changed things up in the second half. They came out with a bit more purpose. They obviously play the ball well. They obviously get the ball long when they can, but also they play through midfield really well as well. And they started imposing themselves on us in the second half. And just as time went on, they created a couple of chances, but we just got a bit nervy, and we just weren't able to control the game probably in the way we would have wanted to, or the way we have in previous seasons, and actually in sometimes this season as well. But all that kind of nerves was summed up by the shambolic sending off, and 2 by the goal. So just touching on the sending off first. I think obviously Alisson, we've praised Alisson so much for being that sweeper, and when the ball goes over the top, him being able to come out and clear the ball, which allows Van Dijk and Lovren to play a high line. But occasions like this is kind of when it goes a bit wrong, and he came out, and I think the ball just maybe bounced shorter than he expected, or it didn't bounce as much, or whatever. So he kind of had no choice but to handle the ball. Otherwise, the Brighton striker was going to play it into an empty net. And obviously, no arguments with the sending off. It's a goalkeeper handling the ball outside the box. There's always going to be a red card. That obviously does mean he's going to miss the derby. But Adrian came on, and obviously Adrian had played the beginning part of the season really because of Alisson's injury. And I think actually going forward for us, having Alisson out at the beginning of the season and Adrian coming in might actually be a blessing in disguise to Liverpool, because going into this period of the season, even though it is only a couple of games, being able to have Adrian kind of experienced with the back four, knowing how to play with them, is a big plus and a big bonus for us. But when he did come on, things were a little bit shaky. I think Klopp said in his press conference, it was difficult for a player to come in from the cold. It was a very cold day, and that kind of very much showed, right, with the free kick. I don't know what we were doing. I think maybe we were just feeling a bit entitled, that the referee would just take our time, let us set the wall, and and do all of this stuff and take our time. But fair play to Brighton, right? Like they weren't taking any prisoners. Lewis Dunk was, you could see him talking to the referee. You could almost guess what he was saying. He was, "Can I take it?" And he did take it. It reminded me of that, obviously not as impressive, but that Thierry Henry free kick ages ago. I think it was against Wigan, where he was talking to the referee. The referee actually made him retake it, but yeah, it was very much like that. And he kind of just rolled the ball into the corner, and it's yet another game where we weren't able to keep a clean sheet. But this one was all very much from our making. I think just keeping switched on and things like that. Fortunately, it didn't cost us in this game, but it could cost us in the future. So it's important that we don't have that feeling of feeling entitled, and that referees and teams are just going to respect us so much they're not even going to try and things like that. So I think that was a really good wake-up call. Luckily, it didn't go on to cost us any points. That's probably the best lesson you can have, where it doesn't actually cost you anything. But it was still a wake-up call, and just shows that we need to be on it a little more. And we can't just kind of rest on our laurels when we're 2-0 up, or whoever, against any opposition, that is, whether they're top half of the table, bottom half of the table, whatever. So, but yeah, so another player that actually Klopp singled out in one of his press conferences, which I was really glad he did, because we actually shouted him out on last week's episode of Let's Talk Liverpool, and that was Dejan Lovren. He had another solid week for Liverpool, obviously getting the equalising goal against Napoli, which was a huge goal. If we had lost that game, we would have had to do a lot more in Salzburg than we're already going to have to do. So that was a huge goal. But again, he played another huge role in defence again against Brighton. The partnership he's had with Virgil van Dijk since Matip's been out has been huge, and I think actually Matip will struggle to get back into the team now. That's how good Lovren's been. And he's shutting Joe Gomez completely out of the team. Joe Gomez is nowhere near the first team right now because of that good partnership and the way Lovren is playing, both individually and as a partnership with Van Dijk. So yeah, I think that was really positive to see again as well, and I'm glad that Lovren is receiving that recognition from the manager, because he has genuinely been really, really good. So that was really good to see. I get the one part of the team which actually surprisingly was kind of off a bit yesterday, was the front three. And obviously, you know, they're allowed off days. They carry so much of the load for us normally. But yeah, obviously Mane and Firmino did have 1 or 2 chances, but they kind of just maybe seemed off it a bit. Maybe, obviously, because of the amount of games they're playing, maybe they need a rest. I'm not sure. Obviously, we've got the derby in the midweek, which I don't think they'll be rested for. But yeah, I think we could do with something different, and maybe the trip to the sunny Qatar may help. But it did look like, and maybe they'll bounce back against Everton, and this is not a point, but maybe the front three just need a bit of rotation, just to freshen them up a bit. Mo Salah's been a bit off the boil. Sadio Mane's been obviously very impressive, and Firmino again as well, obviously with his link-up play, but not necessarily chipping in with as many goals, even though he did get the winner against Crystal Palace last week. So maybe that's something, maybe that's not, I'm not sure. Time will tell whether they do need a rest or not. But the other part of the team that I think the most eyes were on in the Brighton lineup and the way we played based on the Fabinho injury was the midfield. So in this game, Henderson played the kind of number 6 or holding defensive midfielder role. I think that's what we expected. You know, that's where Henderson was maybe, you know, a year ago, but until Klopp realised kind of that right-hand side channel was where it allowed him to get a bit more forward, actually benefited the team and Henderson more. But obviously Henderson can play that number 6 position. He's a bit of a different player to Fabinho. He's a bit more kind of, he's not necessarily got maybe the passing range of Fabinho, and doesn't maybe cut out as many balls as Fabinho does, but he's still a very, very good deputy. But also we've seen so far this season Lallana playing that position as well. So if you cast your minds back to the EFL Cup game against Arsenal, Klopp decided to play Lallana in that number 6 position, which he actually played really well, and I'd be interested to see whether Klopp reverts just in terms of his midfield rotation to allow Lallana to play in that number 6 position over the coming weeks, particularly against teams where we expect to dominate the ball a bit more. I think that would be a really good different option for us. But I think also this injury allows the likes of Shaqiri, who's come back to fitness, and Naby Keita to really step up to the plate this season. Neither of them have really featured much this season. And they obviously did good things for us towards the tail end of last season, both of them. But now this is the perfect opportunity for them to step up. They have the opportunity now. We will undoubtedly have to rotate the squad over the coming games between all the competitions we have to handle. Obviously, we've got that final Champions League group game as well, where we need a result or just a draw against Salzburg. Then obviously the Premier League games, then the Club World Cup, and then we come back and then we have that busy Christmas period, just post-Christmas into the new year. So they will need to play a role in that, and I'll be interested to see whether Klopp kind of rotates it much or does just stick with his tried and tested trio kind of Wijnaldum, Henderson, and actually I think Oxlade-Chamberlain's probably top of that list at the moment. But yeah, that's the shout out to Klopp for this week. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. If you guys, make sure you subscribe to both the podcast and the YouTube channel if you're already here. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you on a review of the Everton game.